Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Learning Curve podcast. Today, we have a special guest who is one of my dearest sister friends, Jasmine.
Hello.
Jasmine was previously an educator for 6 years, and she's now a data analyst, and she's using her passion for technology and solutions to drive insights into the data. That's a mouthful. Jasmine's been on a cross country journey for the past couple of years, and I am so excited to have her on the podcast to share her journey. Welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about today's conversation.
I am too. I have been waiting to get you on the podcast because I so inspired by your journey and I cannot wait for you to talk to us about it. So let's go ahead and get
Thank you.
into it. Tell us a little bit about your professional background and what initially inspired you to change your career.
That's a great question. I feel like I'm going to try not to be long-winded since it's been a journey for many years. But if I can take it all the way back to college, I was actually a chemistry major in college, studying, chemistry to become somehow in the medical profession.
Mm-hmm.
After failing organic chemistry, I just felt a little discouraged about going into the medical field since grades
Right,
were really important. And I didn't
right.
want to go the long route of having to take a whole bunch of classes over and having to do maybe a specialty master's program to get into medical school. I just felt like maybe there's something else I can do. I had a
Mhm.
professor who recommended, well, maybe you should do education. You're always tutoring fellow classmates. You seem like you're really good at helping others. Maybe you should look into that. So
Mhm.
after I graduated, I was still pondering about the whole idea of teaching. It just didn't seem like a career that really sparked my interest. So I ended up going back to school and I earned my first master's in mathematics.
Mm.
Again, I was still pondering what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to, earn my PhD in the future, become a professor. But after getting kind of a little exhausted during my master's and doing research, I realized, oh, maybe I should just pause here and start my career in higher education, working more on the community colleges level. So I
Mhm.
started that. But unfortunately, I couldn't find a full time job. I found an adjunct position, which was great. But
Mhm.
for those who know about adjunct professions, they don't really pay the bill. They're great for supplemental income, but they're not really a great way to like really earn a good living. So I
That part.
started tutoring. Yes, yes. I started tutoring full time. I was working at some middle school and high schools in my area. And I just had multiple teachers just walk up to me and be like, you need to teach. We need you. We need teachers. We need someone who looks like you to work in Title One low income schools. There's
Mhm.
a big need. So I decided, you know what, why not? So I started my career a few years after graduating with my master's, worked in public schools. And I did that for 2 years. And I actually earned the grand teacher burnout. I was just
Mm.
exhausted.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love what I did, but I felt like there was just so many obstacles along the way that just kind of like discouraged my moment of being in the classroom.
Right.
So I continued my career in education, but I was finally able to land a full time position at a university. And I was really excited. I was teaching, but then another obstacle landed my way. 1 month before I turned 30, I was laid off.
Mm.
And that was just such a tragic moment for me because,
Yeah.
30s is supposed to be this grand moment of when, I don't know, you're supposed to have everything together in terms of your
Mhm.
career, maybe buying a
Mhm.
house in the future, maybe settling down, traveling. Funds are supposed to be a lot better, but I walked into my year 30 with no job.
Mm.
And that was really hard. And I just spent about a year or so just kind of reevaluating kind of like where I wanted to go. I was very blessed and fortunate to months after I was laid off to land a position at a private school because I did not want to go back into public school.
Mhm.
Uh, but I landed a position at a private school and I taught at a middle school and I really enjoyed it. But for those who worked in private schools, sometimes they're not the greatest pay. I actually earned more money working in public school. And that's where my 2 extra jobs worked in. So at one point, I was
Mhm.
working 3 jobs.
Yes.
And I think one day I just kinda had this moment, and I was just looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, "This can't be my life. This can't be my career forever."
Right.
Um, so I decided, well, let me see what else is out there. I have a STEM background. I really love problem solving. I wanted different flexibility. I want a way I can still help others, but maybe look at it differently. I started doing research, literally just Googling research of like, what are some fields that I can use my math degree? What are some like really good STEM fields? Where are the jobs? And data analyst kept on coming up. So I was like, you know
Mhm.
what? Let me look a little bit more into this. I decided to go do a second master's because I just felt like it was just a faster pathway instead of actually learning on my own the different technology tools.
Mhm.
So I decided to go back into school, earn a second master's. Mind you, I was still working full time at the private school, and I also had my 2 part-time jobs.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yes. And
Wow.
that was kinda like the stepping stone to where I am today. Yes.
Okay. So tell me then, what were some of the challenges? I mean, I'm hearing what I perceive to be some challenges with going back to school and pursuing your second master's degree, but what would you say were some of the challenges?
I would definitely saying just work-life balance was probably the biggest
Yeah.
challenge
Yeah.
for me. I mean, for those who have worked full-time and also gone to school know how you really have to manage your time very wisely. You only have 24 hours in a day. And
Mhm.
if 8 of it minimum is going to work and then you're commuting back home to school, it definitely can take up time. You got to think about what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to sleep, and I got to do homework. So it took a lot of time.
Mhm.
And because I was also teaching night classes and I was also working on the weekend, my time was even more limited.
Right.
So work-life balance was really exhausted. There was
Yeah.
times when I had to take a semester off because I was tired. Homegirl was
Mhm.
tired. She was tired.
Mhm.
So I needed
Right.
to kind of take my time. I This was not like undergrad where had a lot of flexibility and I can
Mhm.
really push through it in 4 years. I literally was part time, and it took me almost 4 years to finish my second master's.
Yeah. And then you had us trying to pull you outside.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
make sure you had a little bit of a life because we were
I
missing
mean,
seeing you.
it was tough. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, you guys were like clowning, but also supportive about my decision
Yeah.
of going back to school and working
Yeah.
3 jobs at the same time. But yes,
Yeah. You were juggling all the balls in the air. You
yes.
really were. How did you manage, like, to not just throw in the towel and be like, just forget it?
I think for me, definitely finding ways just to kind of like really be organized. So
Mhm.
with school, what I loved about my program, it was pretty clockwork in terms of when assignments were due and
Mhm.
when you had access assignments. So that kind of helped me manage my time and put together kind of like a schedule of when my study days were.
Mhm.
I also did an online program, which was a lot more flexible for me
Sure.
because I
Right.
didn't have to worry about traveling on to campus, fighting for
Right.
parking, running to the classroom.
Mhm.
So that was a lot better. And I think one thing that I will note is I started this journey halfway through my master's. COVID hit, so I had
Mm.
flexibility to be at
Oh
home. So
goodness.
I was
Yeah.
working from home, I was at school. My social life was diminished during, the year of
Sure.
2020.
Right.
So I didn't have a lot of outside distractions. So that kind of helped me as
That
well.
kinda
It was
helped.
kind of
Yeah.
like a blessing in disguise, I guess you can
Right.
say, will allow me to kind of focus on what I need to focus on.
Mhm.
So, I mean, like I said, just time management, prioritizing what was important, giving myself flexibility, and also not waiting the last minute to do things. That
Right.
included with grading, with my job. That also included with studying for work. Like I couldn't do
Mhm.
things at the last minute. I didn't have the
Right.
time, so I had to basically be very kind of like really on it when it came to
Mhm.
balancing my school work and just also finding time for myself.
Sure. Sure. I need you to come talk to my students about the time management and not wait until the last minute.
Oh, Oh,
Yes, they need to hear this. But anyway, that's another podcast.
yeah. Hmm.
So tell me then, second master's degree in hand, how do you get to the next step? What influenced your decision? Where did you end up? And I think you went into a special type of program that eventually turned into the job that you have now. So tell us all about that.
Yeah, I was very blessed and fortunate. So, since I was laid off, I continued to kind of apply for jobs. Even when
Hmm.
I earned my teaching job, I just knew with the pay, it was a great wage to learn something new, work in a different environment, but I knew it just wasn't sustainable for my long term goals.
Hmm.
So, I kept applying. And unfortunately, during COVID, for many of us who were job seekers during that time, jobs are very limited the first year. But I
Hmm.
think that once we kind of got a groove of like what life would look like after 2020, companies were a little bit more flexible about hiring and they want to kind of grow their workforce a little bit. So I was really fortunate when I continued to apply. I saw my current company, they had a rotational program, meaning that you are a full-time employee but you had an opportunity to do projects and kind of like work in different departments um, to kind of see where you can fit in.
Hmm.
Um, I will note I was actually still in school at this time. I was probably in my last year of my master's program,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I don't know if it was just like they were just really impressed by my resume because I really highlighted my projects,
Hmm.
or if it was just because I had to do a presentation as part of my interview that they were just really impressed by my just interviews, my presentation skills. Something about it just had me stand out of the
Hmm.
thousands of applicants. I'm just very blessed and fortunate, and that's kind of how my journey began with my current company. I
Wow,
did a
that's
rotational
excellent.
program for about a year,
Hmm.
and that allowed me to kind of now move from the education side to the corporate side. So
Sure.
that's where I'm at right now.
What was that transition like going from education from public to private and then to private sector corporation type of work?
It's definitely a different, like, culture, I will say.
Hmm.
I think they both have their pros and cons. Definitely one of the things that stood out is I was just so used to just so minute, like, calling people by Mr. and Mrs., even other fellow teachers. That's just what we did,
Right.
In corporate America, you call people by their first name. So there was no you don't have that. So I
Hmm.
definitely that was something I kind of had to turn off.
Hmm.
And also for me, I was just so used to my education practices of kind of having to be boxed when it came to some of the rules and regulations, especially when it came to working with students and trying to deal with standardized tests. I think
Mm.
one of the things that I am currently learning in my journey is taking charge of different things that I'd never had an opportunity to do in my education experience. So
Hmm.
that's kind of been different.
Okay.
And I think for me, I'm very fortunate that I work for a company that is flexible in terms
Hmm.
of I'm able to work from home at times. So that was really kind of exciting. The moment that uh, the vaccine came out, we was back in the classroom.
Hmm.
So,
Right.
but in corporate, you can definitely see those opportunities for some companies where they allow workers to do maybe remote or hybrid schedule to kind of you know work with you know employees when it comes to that work life balance.
Hmm. So you got the master's, you get connected in this rotational program with your company. COVID is going on. We finished with COVID. You're working remotely, and you ended up having to relocate for this position, right?
I did. So I want to say that I definitely took a leap of faith.
Hmm.
And when I mean that, when I applied for the position, 1 week later, I had an interview. 2 weeks after that, I had a offer. And less than a month later, I had to move to a city and state that I've never seen in my life.
Mm,
Um,
I
I
remember.
literally
I remember.
was
We were so sad you left us. I
I
remember.
don't know. It was just really crazy how I've never been that bold in my life, but I was just like, you
Yeah.
know what? Why not? If it fails, I can always move back, go back to
Right.
teaching, do something else. But I was like, you know what? I don't have a lot holding me down from just jumping and doing something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I literally, even just as small as like looking for apartment, I literally was online looking for apartments, and because it was kind of still towards the end of COVID, and I couldn't make it up to the state because it was like hours away to travel, I literally was doing a video uh just touring a place. And
Wow.
also my apartment wasn't even built. Like it was a brand new apartment
Ooh,
and I'm just touring.
that was a leap of faith. You could have gone up there and been sitting in the middle of an empty, empty
I didn't
lot.
even I didn't even know I didn't even know what the neighborhood looked like. I was literally
Wow.
Googling like what this neighborhood looked like and what this city looked like, and I knew nothing about it. I'm like asking people, I'm like, hey, do you know anything about this area? And luckily I was able to connect to someone in our friend group who was like, I'm near the area, I can connect you with
Mm-hmm.
somebody. So that helped.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
what I mean, I literally packed my bag and I was like, here I go.
That is, sis,
Moving
let me
up.
tell you, that is just, I can't even put words to it, just how much bravery and courage that took for you to do that. I'm just so proud of you for doing that. And so, what was it like then living in this different state, away from your family, your friends? And I think at the time you had a significant other. So, away from your significant other, what was it like being up there?
I think for me, I think one of the biggest challenge was, and it was kind of unique from my experience. It was kind of like towards the end of like that COVID era.
Mhm.
So a lot of what I knew in terms of community and like finding things to do was really challenging.
Mhm.
Um, I felt like there was times when I felt a little isolated. I just
Sure.
felt like I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know anybody. I actually have
Mhm.
to do things by myself.
Yeah.
I was fortunate to, find a few people to kind of connect with. Um, I think one of the things I did was, I don't know, I used a dating app and they have like a friend option on the dating app. So I was able
Okay.
to connect with somebody. And that's how I was able to kind of find a few ladies in the area who I was able to hang out with.
Mhm.
I also connected with coworkers, which is something usually I don't really hang out with my coworkers like
Right.
that. But
Right.
it was one way because, some of us, we were during a rotational program, we were also new to the area.
Okay.
So we just kind of like, let's get together. And also, you know, I did traveling because I was in a long distance relationship.
Mhm.
I had to travel minimum 6 hours if I was to drive, fly or take the train
Mhm.
to see my significant other. So that also took me away from exploring my new area because I was trying to
Yeah.
balance a relationship at the same
Wow.
time. Um, in terms of family, I was, a coast away from
Mhm.
my family. And
Mhm.
then in terms of where my friends that I had before I moved, they were like, hours away as well. So it
Mhm.
was definitely it was a weird season. It was definitely,
Yeah.
I had to really adjust my expectation of just what
Mhm.
community looked like for me. I was
Mhm.
used to just kind of be surrounded by so many people. And in my new journey, I literally had to be okay with kind of doing things on my own or
Mhm.
being kind of flexible or open to maybe starting a new community in where I moved to. So it was
Sure.
definitely challenging. There was moments where I was like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Because I'm
Mhm.
ready to pack up and go. Because this is not, I don't know, the demographic was different, just the
Mm.
culture was different from where I was
Yeah.
at. I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to be here, but I
Yeah.
pushed through it and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that we came, me and another one of our friends came to visit, and it was so nice to kind of see where you were in that environment, see how you kind of set things up and your cute apartment, and we got to tour some of the different areas and go to some of the events and really kind of see where you were and just how well that you seem to acclimate to the new surroundings. So it's interesting to hear you talk about some of these feelings that you were having of isolation, or even sometimes, perhaps thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this, maybe I should go back. It's interesting how it can be both, and
Yes,
that you
it
can be
can.
excited about a new opportunity, but at the same time be, missing and nostalgic about, the opportunity that you left. So how did we get from where you were to all the way across the coast?
So one of the challenges that many of us face post, I guess, COVID era was cost of living. And I
Mhm.
moved to a state that, even though I was making the most money I've ever made in my career at the time,
Mhm.
cost of living was unfortunately just a driver for so many people.
Right.
I was, I was working hybrid, and I don't know, I just took a chance and I asked my manager, I was like, I know I'm not trying to make this personal, but can I just become remote? Like, no one on our team works in the same office because my company has offices in different locations in the country. So, like, does it make sense for me to come into the, office all the time? So I was able to kind of negotiate, that a little bit.
All right.
And I decided to pack up my apartment, move even further from my significant other at the time, move further from my friends, and move in at my grown big age to my mama's house.
That's right. You can always come back, baby. You can
Yeah,
always
that's what
come
she said. She's
back.
like, I was so frustrated because I was actually, it's not like I gave up looking for a place.
Right.
I literally took lunch breaks. I was just, all my free time, I was looking up places. I actually had a place,
Mhm.
and I was really close to signing a lease, and I had to back up from the place because they didn't have proper parking situation
Mhm.
for me. I couldn't park
Right.
on the street because they had so many rules, and their parking lot was so small. Every parking spot was like unavailable. When I
Mhm.
applied, there was a
Mhm.
parking spot, but someone else beat me to it,
Mm.
and I was just like, I don't. I think there are so many signs saying I don't need to be here right now.
Right.
So I packed up my bags, shipped my car across country, put stuff in storage. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just, I don't know, maybe I'll just take a few months. And a few months ended up being over a year. I was living
Yeah.
at my mama's house at my big age, living at my parents' house, uh, working remote. And
Mhm.
one of the challenges I faced working remote on a different coast from my where I was before is the time
Mhm.
difference. I One of the
Yes.
things that I had to agree upon with my manager was I still had to work the same coast hours where my job was originally at. But since
Ah,
I was
okay.
moving to a different coast, I had to readjust my schedule. And that was really challenging because I was literally living with my family, living on a different time zone in order to kind of sustain my job. And I
Right.
did that for a year and a half.
Yeah, you did. I remember you were up like I came out to visit you and you were getting up at like some crazy like 5 or something in the
No, it
morning.
was earlier. I
Oh,
was
I'm
getting up
sorry.
at
Excuse
like
me. Was it 4?
Yeah, I was getting up at no later than 4 o'clock in the
4
morning.
o'clock in the
Yeah.
morning so that you could
Yeah.
be ready to work
Yes.
on the East Coast time
Yeah.
where your job was. You a
Yeah.
good one, sis. You a real good
I mean, I don't know. I think remote jobs are kind of a hot commodity right now. So I was
Yeah.
just like, I'm gonna push it through. And I also told myself this is just a temporary thing.
Right.
I was like, I'm gonna just stay here,
Yeah.
reset, pay down some debt,
Mhm.
figure out where I want to go. And then when the time was right, I would
Mhm.
relocate back to the East Coast. And
Yeah.
that was my plan. And eventually I got myself there.
Yeah. It's like that temporary discomfort, but it
Mhm.
goes to support the larger long-term goal.
It does.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does.
So, how did you get back over on this? Oh, well, before we ask that question, let me ask this question. So, what was it like then trying to maintain your connections while you
Mm.
were all the way across country?
It was tough. Well, I will say this. I was able to have a stronger connection with my family because,
Mhm.
I've been living on a different coast from my parents for many years.
Mhm.
Since my college era, I decided to go to college on a different coast of where my parents live. So that gave me opportunity just to spend time with my parents. They're getting older, connect with other family members. They're getting older. Spend time with siblings. It was great for
Mhm.
that aspect. But I
Mhm.
also felt like my other relationships, like the communities I built on the other coast, were feeling a little disconnected because I was just
Sure.
so far away. Like I said, the there were times when I did, because I was still in this long distance romantic relationship. There was times where I was able to fly a few times over to visit my partner,
Mhm.
and that also gave me opportunity to visit my friends, but it
Mhm.
wasn't as frequent as it was before.
Right.
So that was really challenging. But I must say, one thing I will give you a shout out is I'm so thankful that you came and visit me,
Yes, I
and
did.
we was also able to like meet up halfway. I don't
Mhm.
know, sort of halfway for
Yes.
for trips
Yes, I
and have
had
some great
a
travel moments. So
time out there, so I was so happy to go out there and visit you because it was such a wonderful, wonderful time in the hospitality that you and your family showed me. I had a ball. I had a ball. So thank you for letting me come out.
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So it sounds like that a lot of intentionality had to be
Mhm.
present in order for you to keep up with some of the connections. I know for us as friends, we would do virtual phone calls
Yeah.
and virtual kind of catch up nights, wind downs, or we would call each other on the phone pretty regularly to kind of stay in contact. But what about this your romantic relationship? Because I'm sure phone calls and virtual dates wasn't, perhaps enough to feed that relationship, which was, a very powerful and deep relationship for you.
So I think in the beginning, because I think one thing is my relationship with my romantic partner has always been long distance. When we
Mm.
met, we lived in different states, but
Mhm.
it was drivable. Like they can do a 3-day weekend. I could do a 3-day
Right.
weekend. When I did take my career and data analyst for my rotational program with my current company, that kind of expanded it a little bit further. So we went from maybe a few hours to maybe like 6 hours.
Mhm.
And that was still sustainable because we was able to see each other maybe at least once a month.
Okay.
Someone was traveling, and we had different options. We can do train, we can do plane, we can drive. So that was still kind of sustainable. Still kind of, challenging because it was long distance, but we was able to stay in it. I think the challenge was the moment that we limit our ways of kind of seeing each other.
Mm.
When I moved across country, that made it very challenging.
Yeah.
Um, and we did everything from virtual dates. We talked all the time, but I feel like, and we took turns visiting each other. But eventually, sometimes that's not enough, to sustain a relationship.
Right.
Eventually, I always tell people if you're in a long distance relationship, what is the end goal? You have to
Mhm.
have an end goal and you have
Yes.
to have a timeline in order to kind of bridge the gap.
Mhm.
Because if not, you're going to just kind of get into this cycle of just kind of like going back and forth traveling, going back and forth of doing these phone calls, virtual dates, and you slowly start to grow apart from that person because you're so far away.
Right.
So for me, that's kind of what happened was this romantic relationship that was deeply connected, that was really important in my journey because that person has definitely had such an important impact in terms of
Mhm.
helping me move, being supportive with my career decision. Eventually that just it wasn't sustainable for both of us.
Right.
So that relationship had to end.
Yeah.
Um and that was challenging. So now I'm like sitting
Right.
in my mama's house,
Yeah.
working different hours,
Mhm.
going through a heartbreak,
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
still having to kind of sustain my whole life,
Right.
and not having a lot of friends around to kind of support me.
Mm.
And then when I moved, one of the things I didn't mention earlier, even though it was great to spending time with my family, I struggled making friends when I moved because of my work schedule.
Right.
I was on a different time zone, and I was just kind of like, and also moving back, things have changed so much from when I moved. I remember
Mhm.
when I was younger, when I came home from college, on the holidays, I always had friends to hang out with. And
Mhm.
as I live more and more on a different coast, those connections kind of diminish.
Mhm.
So when I moved back to my parents' house, I had no friends back at home.
Mm.
So
So
I
it's
did
like you were
everything.
starting all over.
It was like me literally living in a new city. Like,
Mhm.
I was I don't know, I was very much surprised that I knew how to get around, but there was
Right.
times when I still had to use my GPS because I'm like, wait a minute, this is new buildings,
Right, right.
new restaurants.
I don't
What's
remember
going
this
on?
being here.
I I was like, oh my gosh, where these houses come from? Like, it was
Right.
just kind of like a brand new community
Yeah.
in a way for me. So
Yeah.
I was just kind of like finding my way. So one of my ways, I kind of like, it wasn't, I was kind of connected, but I wasn't, which is kind of going to the gym just to
Mhm.
surround myself by people.
Mhm.
And even if it just says saying hi to people,
Right.
I did everything from, looking for social groups in the area. I did everything from looking for professional groups. I did all that. But because of my work schedule, it was really challenging to kind of be up late in the middle of the week trying to
Right.
like connect with people.
Right. Trying to hang out. Right.
Yep. So the only time I can kind of really connect with anybody was like during my free time, which is on the
On the
weekends. Because during
weekends.
the week, I was just like,
Yeah.
I didn't have the time and the energy to do that.
Right. You had to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I can't be
Hmm.
messing with y'all out here. Mhm.
Yes.
I get it. I get it. So it sounds like some sacrifices, definitely with this transition to the other side of the country, um, happened as you were continuing to pursue your career and your profession. Do you feel like it was worth it?
I think so because I try not to just take regrets in life. I know initially I was kind of like on that path. I'm like, did I make the right decision? Like
Mm-hmm.
moving to the other side of the country, was it really worth it? Like I let this great relationship kind of like diminish. But I've
Mm-hmm.
also realized that it takes two to kind of make a relationship work. And I feel like I can't put all that pressure on my shoulders when I
Yeah,
also had another person to kind of consider where maybe they could have looked at things differently in terms of making
sure.
this relationship work. So
That
I don't
part.
regret my decision because if it was meant to be, it it would be,
It would
right?
be. Right.
So I can't be so hard on myself with that. I think
Yeah.
yeah, I had to make a lot of sacrifices and changings. And being in your 30s, living in your parents' house is so
Mm-hmm.
different than like when you're in your early 20s or when you're a teen. It's so
Right.
different.
Right.
Um there's times when, my parents had to kind of readjust of just having their grown daughter live with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then also living and working different hours was a challenge, figuring out, and I don't know, I just took this time to kind of figure out what my next steps were, what my next
Yeah.
goals were.
Yeah.
I just told myself this is just a temporary position. This is
Mm-hmm.
just a temporary phase in my life. Sometimes in life, we have those moments where they're just temporary, just to kind of
Mm-hmm.
be a stepping stone for our next chapter.
Right.
So I I just stayed positive, optimistic the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
you know. A lot of prayer, a
Absolutely.
lot of just, self-reflection just kind of keep me going cuz in the
Mm-hmm.
moment I was like, what am I doing? This is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of in the season of my life where I'm like, okay, I see where this was going. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't see it I didn't see it the moment, but okay, now I
Now you
see
see.
what this now I see
Yeah.
it. Yes.
Yeah. Were you surprised by kind of how you were able to manage this and deal with this situation? Do you feel like you kind of saw a new version of yourself kind of coming out of this?
I think so. I feel like for me, I really shocked myself of how resilient I am in terms of
Yes.
challenging situations and
Yes.
how I also don't walk around with my just stressors and emotions on my shoulders. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like in life, you're going to have some amazing moments, but also in life, you're going to have challenging moments.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just a reflection of the woman I have became
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like that's kind of one of my strengths in life. It's kind of getting through tough decisions
Mm-hmm.
and being optimistic to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel
Mm-hmm.
during these challenging moments. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, these are just lessons that just kind of make me the woman I am, a better version of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I can check off, yes, I can live in a different city or state that I've never been
Right.
to.
Right.
And I'll be okay. Yes, I can at my big age, live with my parents. If I need to,
Mm-hmm.
I know how to,
Exactly.
yes, I can learn how to multitask working and going to school, and
Mm-hmm.
I can do that. Yes, I can manage a long distance relationship. Even though my
Mm-hmm.
relationship didn't last forever, I can do another long distance relationship. Yes, I can. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's the other person's willing to work it and I'm willing to work it, it can work. I
Yeah.
feel like these little challenges that I have faced just allow me to say, wow, you can do a lot more than what you think you can do. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in life we just think that we can't do it, but we really can. Sometimes we just need a little push, but we can
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Gonna be kind of thrown out into that pool and it's a sink or swim situation and you
Yeah,
swam. Let me
I had no
tell
choice.
you.
I mean, there's times I was floating on my back though. I feel
Hitting that
like there
doggy
was like
paddle.
a moment when there was just like a wooden plank just like waiting for me to kind of like lean on at moments. Cause I
At a
mean,
little
I wasn't like,
Titanic moment.
yeah,
Yes.
I was Rose for a moment. So,
Yes, I
so
get it. But you made it and you survived it and you are thriving in it. And that's what I am just so proud about is just
no, thank
seeing
you.
you through all of this and all of these transitions and just seeing you glow and just thrive in abundance. I love it. And it sounds like these were some valuable lessons that you learned while you were in this learning curve, which is what this
Hmm.
podcast is all about, talking
Hmm.
about these changes and transitions and journeys in life and the things that we take away from all of those experiences. So, what kind of advice would you give somebody who's considering a major career change like you had, or even going back to school later in life?
I think I'll kind of separate that. So for going back to school, you really need to do your research if going back to school is really going to help you with your career.
Right.
School is expensive, and unless you can find a way to kind of get fully funded, you need to figure out, is this investment of my education, not only investment of money, but investment of your time, is really going to give you the career that you're looking into.
Right.
A lot of times, certain careers, you don't have to go back to school. Like,
Right.
I didn't have to go back to school to get my master's, but I think
Mhm.
it did help because me having the school on my resume, the projects that I worked on kind of set me apart versus somebody who may self talk,
Learned on their own.
And that doesn't mean that if you self teach yourself, I have met people who were
Mhm.
able to get into the careers they wanted. So you just have to kind of think about, is the investment of money and time really worth this degree? Because
Mhm.
school is a big investment.
Yeah.
And then in terms of if you want to switch careers, think about your transferable skills from your previous
Mhm.
career that you can utilize to kind of help you shape going to your new career.
Right.
There are so many soft skills that we have in terms of our career that you can use in different fields. So for
Yes.
me, in education, those organization skills,
Mhm.
those teaching skills,
Mhm.
public speaking,
Mhm.
projects,
Mhm.
putting together presentations, things like that really kind of like I still use in my current career. That kind of
Absolutely.
didn't go away. It's
Mhm.
just different. So definitely highlight those skills. And I would say tap into your network. I mean, for me, I'm very blessed that I was able to apply directly to a company, get an interview, get an offer, but that may not always be the case for everybody. It's a
Right.
different market right now in terms of the jobs.
Right.
So definitely utilize your network. Network from people you worked with, your friends,
Mhm.
family, colleagues, classmates. Definitely tap into your network because your network definitely can get you a little bit further versus just kind of blindly applying for
Sure.
companies. Sometimes it works, but because certain jobs, careers, especially with those remote jobs and those hybrid jobs, they tend to be very competitive right now. You kind of
Mhm.
have to find a way to kind of get yourself a little bit ahead. So your network can definitely be a place I would focus mainly on. But that
Right.
doesn't mean you should stop applying through companies. But definitely make sure you also utilize the time to tap into your network as well.
Sure.
I feel like for me, that was probably the biggest advice. And I think no matter what you decide to do, go back to school, change your career, or both, just just do it.
Yeah.
Just take the leap of faith.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know how things are going to end, if it's something that you're really passionate about. Because if I just decided, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't see myself doing it. Oh my gosh, I don't see that I'm worthy of doing it. I wouldn't be here today. You
Right.
know, I literally just decided to just like, you know what, I'm going to jump into the water and we're going to make it work. And I made it work. And sometimes you just need that push. So I took a leap of
Absolutely.
faith, and that leap of faith has allowed me to expand into a field that I really do enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
learn new skill sets, have the flexibility to work from home, have the flexibility to travel because I traveled for work a few times,
Mm-hmm.
have the flexibility to move somewhere else, meet new people along the way,
Mm-hmm.
have new experiences. I mean, I've done all that
Yeah.
because I decided to take a leap of faith.
Awesome. Awesome. Such a wonderful journey. I'm just so excited and envious and just proud of
I
you.
mean, you took some journeys, you took some leap of faith
I
too.
have been on some journeys. Yes, that's what started this whole idea of the Learning
Yeah.
Curve podcast, and I'll be sharing those journeys along the way. But I just know so many people in my life who have had amazing adventures in the
Mhm.
learning curve that
Mhm.
I got to share this platform. I can't just
Yeah.
hog it with my stories because y'all have got some stories that have to be heard, should be heard, are important, and need to be heard. So let's get back to your journey because the journey wasn't over
No.
because you decided to come back over to the other side of the country. What was behind that decision and what was that transition like?
Well, it was always been a goal to move back to the other coast.
Hmm.
I knew that living with my parents was temporary, but I had some other goals that I wanted to check off before I can move. And
Hmm.
once I got to a comfortable place where I was able to um, meet those goals, I was like,
Hmm.
okay, let's go.
Yeah.
So I decided to move. I actually ended up moving back to where the story all began, back to the city when I was teaching,
Hmm.
back to where I moved. It's kind of like this full 360
Back
circle, I guess you could.
home.
Yeah, my home away from home.
Yes.
So I ended up moving back. It just for me, it just made sense in terms of now that I'm living on the same coast, I can work the hours I was working before.
Yes.
Financially, it just made sense because I do get this question sometimes why you didn't move back to where your job was at. Financially, it was just a more expensive area, and this is a more
Hmm.
affordable area, so I'm able to
Hmm.
still take some time to do those financial goals because I have financial goals that I am passionate about of taking
Hmm.
care of, and this location back to my second home has allowed me to do that.
Hmm.
And I really miss the community that I built. I think one
Hmm.
of the things I struggled, moving to different places, and it's not to discourage anybody from moving, is sometimes building your community can take time.
Yeah,
It
it
took me a
can.
while when I first moved to this area to meet the people that I know.
Right.
Um, and I just kind of like, you know what, let me just move back. And
Hmm.
honestly, I don't know how long I'm gonna be here. I'm literally just enjoying
No, 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 no. We are not
the
even
moment.
talking about that. No, ma'am. We are not even going there.
I'm just
Mm-mm.
saying, I don't know. I spoke it to my manager. I was like, you know what? Maybe I should do like an international experience. Like, is there any international jobs that I can apply for? I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know. But right now, I'm still in my current lease,
I'm gonna
and
need some time to let that settle and process before and notice we make a decision about your future.
I haven't moved. I haven't applied for anything.
Good.
Look, I'm still here, but I'm also because I have made these journeys
Yeah.
before, because I've made these leaps of faith before, because I have moved before. I
Yeah.
feel like why not? I still
Hmm.
feel like I'm at a space in my life where I think this is an opportunity for me to kind of see different parts of the world and explore
Absolutely.
different places and maybe challenge myself into different things in my career.
Sure.
So, again, these are just things I'm just kind of like thinking about, but I
Hmm.
haven't really put the work into it
Yeah.
quite yet. But you never know. Well, I mean, I'll just put a pause on that comment.
Yes, let's do that because my anxiety is rising right now. So let's just
We'll
keep
put a
that
pause.
in the
We'll put a
far
pause.
future.
I'll put it in a box and I'll throw
Thank
the
you, and
key.
put it way back in the shelf
Maybe
of
not
the
way back.
closet.
Like it's there, but
Way back behind the winter coats, way back. All
okay.
right. I'm just playing with you. You know that I am 100% in support of you going out here and seeing the world and traveling and using the freedom and flexibility that you have that comes with you being unattached to be
hmm
able to go out here and experience life because there's so much more to this life and to this world than either coast of the United States. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm for it. I'm always looking for another place to visit. So
hmm
so let's talk and figure out where you're going so that it's a place that I want to go as well.
Oh,
So
okay. I,
we
I
will we will
noted.
figure it out together. So what do you like about being back on this coast?
I don't know. I think I like how it's easy just to kind of get around and visit different places.
Mhm.
Living on the West Coast, states are a lot bigger and they're just spread out. I do like the things a little bit cheaper, but I don't know. In this economy, everything is
Shoot.
expensive at this point.
Right.
I mean, I was like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I went to the store. I'm like, oh, eggs are what? Oh
Yes.
no. I'm about to be vegan at this point because
For
things are so
real.
expensive.
Or go get you some
uh,
chickens like one of our friends.
I look. I'm telling you, I'm about to have a whole garden. I don't know where because I don't have the
Right.
space, but I'm gonna just have an urban garden at this point because things
At
are so
this
expensive.
point, it's ridiculous.
But I do. I think I just like just. I don't know. I just this coast has always gravitated me, even though the West has a special place in my heart. But
For
I feel
sure.
like this has just always been a second home for me.
Yeah.
Something about the weather, something about the people, something about the culture, something about just the community. Something is always kind of gravitating me here. So this is
Mhm.
always a second home that I've made for myself. But I don't know. It just feels comforting.
Yeah.
It really does. It feels safe. It
Mhm.
feels I don't know, it just feels supportive. It feels
Mhm.
love. And I think those are just things that kind of like gravitated me. I
Of
want to be in
course.
places where I can thrive. And I feel like just looking back, even in my challenge moments, living on this coast, I had some thriving moments. And
Mhm.
I kind of wanted to kind of experience that again.
Sure. And we're so glad you're back. I know I'm so glad you're back. For as
Yeah.
long as you decide to stay, I am so glad you're back and
Yeah.
taking advantage of your presence. Yes, I am. So, if you were sitting across from your younger self, what would be a piece of advice you would tell your younger self in preparation for what was ahead?
Wouldn't tell my younger self much. I feel like my younger self was full of anxiety about all the decisions that I made.
Mm,
And I don't want to add more stress to my younger self. I'll tell my younger self that maybe in the moment it may seem like life is just looking like it's just not going anywhere. Life looks stressful. Your career decision is all over the place. That class you failed in college, it seems like the end of the world, but it's not. That
right.
job that you lost and was laid off is something bigger and better is coming. I
Yes.
just tell my younger self like just keep moving, just stay
Yeah.
resilient, enjoy life, connect with your community, find your purpose, do things that bring you joy, but life is going to be okay.
That's so heartwarming to hear. And your story is just so inspiring. It's been
Thank you.
inspiring to me. I know it's inspiring to other people that we know that know about your journey and what you've been through. And I just am so thankful that I've been able to kind of have a front seat to
What?
this wonderful, wonderful journey of yours. How can people who want to connect with you or follow your journey, how can they stay connected with you?
Well, I'm not a huge on social media, but I do have LinkedIn. So
Okay.
you're more than welcome to share that with anyone who wants to connect, who has any
Okay.
questions about, you know, data analyst, like what does it entail, what skill sets that are important, or just,
Sure.
just want to connect on LinkedIn, you're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm not as big as I should be on social media because I'm
That
so
is
busy just
okay. There is
living.
nothing out there on social media for you right now.
I mean,
Mm-mm.
I will say it's one way for us to connect with people that you may not
It
talk to every
is.
way
It is.
and find resources. I mean, I feel like the moments I am on social media, I find very interesting resources.
Mm-hmm.
They can also be something
But
else,
there's
and
a
that's
lot of foolishness on the social
a
media
whole
too.
conversation for another day.
Yes.
But yes, you're more than welcome to share my LinkedIn, and I'll
Okay.
make sure I'll provide that for you.
Yeah.
So,
If folks want to ask me how to connect with
oh
Jasmine
yeah,
further, please hit me up on the email, thelearningcurvepcast@gmail.com. And of course, I want you to like and share and subscribe to this podcast. We are available on Spotify as well as on YouTube. So please check us out. Follow us on Instagram at The Learning Curve PCast. Jasmine, send us off with some final words of wisdom or encouragement for people in the audience who might be listening to your story and your journey.
well, before I do that, I just want to say thank you just being just a supportive friend along my journey.
Oh,
Like it was like I
don't you
mentioned
get me crying
earlier.
now.
I mentioned earlier, like when you move and you start a new journey, even if you don't move, just starting a new chapter, sometimes it can feel a little isolating.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to say thank you for being a supportive friend. And you're just not the only friend. Like there's other
Right.
people that I think as well in my community who just been very supportive
Yeah.
of this journey and me and just kind of keeping me in good thoughts. If it's a
Mm-hmm.
text message, it's a phone call, if it's
Yeah.
visiting me, or whatever it is, sending me memes on social media, even though I barely
Mm-hmm.
check them, like whatever it is, I just want to
Yes.
say thank you for everyone in my community. Thank you, for my family who's been keeping me in good thoughts and prayers. Just,
Right.
just thank you for my community because I feel
Yeah.
like community is important. And on that note, for all the listeners, in terms of community, it's important to have a community that you can kind of reflect on. Even though it seemed like in my stories, I did everything on my own, but there was at least one person who was in my corner along the way who kind of helped me and support me and was there for me. Because moving from different places, I think since the past 3 years, I think I moved
Mm-hmm.
like 3 or 4 times. Like that's
Yes.
ridiculous.
Yes.
I didn't do it by myself.
Right.
So there
Right.
was definitely people who was helping me, supporting me. Um, Definitely people I've worked with who've been supportive and helpful along my journey. Because one thing I didn't mention earlier, being new to a career, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and
Sure.
that's okay. And you can't be really hard on yourself during those times.
Right.
So I'm just really thankful for
It's a
those
learning
coworkers.
curve.
It is, who are really patient. I'm learning new skills, I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
different things that I never thought I would be doing. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really thankful for those people. And then most importantly, just have grace for yourself. Like I said, life is just sometimes life's, but at the end of the day, you got to give yourself grace because
Mm-hmm.
as long as you're getting up and you're doing your best, then you're doing all right.
That's
So
right.
yeah.
One foot in front of the other. As long as you're
Yeah.
moving forward, you could be crawling, baby steps, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Forward movement is forward movement. And you have been moving forward full steam for quite some time. And I am so proud of your progress, so proud of the journey. I'm so proud of you, Jasmine. I
Thank
can't say it
you.
enough. I cannot say it enough.
Thank
How
you.
proud I am of you just stepping out on faith and believing in yourself and taking a risk and taking a risk on you
Yeah.
and believing that you can do it no matter what happens. And you have shown that to be true. So that's why I think your story is so inspirational to folks. And I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you coming onto the podcast and sharing your story with us. And I look forward to hanging out with you and spending time with you and traveling with you, going to concerts with you
Yes.
for as long as you decide to stay here, which hopefully is quite some time, but we'll talk about that in another
Okay,
podcast.
that's another podcast. That'll be like a part two.
Yes, part two.
Look,
So thank
give myself
you.
a few months. Yes.
Yes, Yeah, we'll talk about that. Thank you so much for coming on with me tonight. Again, folks, please make sure that you follow, like, share, and subscribe to the Learning Curve podcast. This is how I keep it going. The more people that we can get involved in this community is the goal. So until we talk again, embrace the curves.